The ship had been at sea for 3 days when everything changed. The morning had started beautifully, with my son Tobias laughing at something on his phone, his wife Sloane taking photographs of our granddaughter Amelia against the endless blue horizon. I remember thinking how perfect they looked, this family I had built, this legacy I had created through years of midnight shifts as a nurse and careful budgeting to ensure Tobias had every opportunity I never did. The dining room bustled with the refined chaos of lunchtime. Crystal chandeliers swayed gently with the ship's motion, and the scent of fresh bread and seafood filled the air. I sat at our usual table near the window, watching Amelia color in her activity book while Sloane checked her makeup in a compact mirror. Tobias had excused himself to make a business call. Always working, that boy. I used to worry about him, but Sloane seemed to keep him grounded. The waitress who approached our table wasn't our usual server. She was young, perhaps in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled back tightly and eyes that darted around nervously. Her name tag read Marina, and her hands trembled slightly as she refilled my water glass. "Mrs. Caldwell," she whispered, leaning close enough that I could smell her floral perfume mixed with something sharper, like fear. I looked up, surprised she knew my name. "Yes." She glanced over her shoulder, then quickly slid a folded napkin under the edge of my bread plate. The movement was so subtle that Sloane, absorbed in her phone, didn't notice. Marina's eyes met mine for just a moment, wide and urgent, before she hurried away toward the kitchen. My heart began to pound in a way it hadn't since my nursing days, when a patient's vitals would suddenly crash, and you'd have those critical seconds to decide what to do. I waited until Sloane excused herself to the restroom, taking Amelia with her, before I unfolded the napkin with trembling fingers. The handwriting was hurried, almost desperate. "Be careful with your family. Watch them closely. Call the police when you see the truth. Room 847. Come alone if you need answers. I'm trying to help you." The napkin fell from my hands, fluttering to the table like a wounded bird. My mind raced through possibilities, each more frightening than the last. Was this a scam? Some elaborate cruise ship con? But the terror in Marina's eyes had been real. I've seen enough fear in my life to know when it's genuine. I looked around the dining room with fresh eyes. Suddenly, the laughter at nearby tables seemed forced, the clinking of silverware too loud, the smiles of the staff too practiced. My stomach twisted with a sensation I recognized from my years in the emergency room, the feeling that something terrible was happening, and I was the only one who could see it. When Tobias returned to the table, his phone pressed to his ear, I studied him differently, really looked at him. My son, 47 years old, successful in commercial real estate, always impeccably dressed in his tailored shirts and expensive watches. He smiled at me as he finished his call, that same crooked smile he'd had since he was a boy. "Sorry, Mom, just closing a deal. You know how it is." Did I? I realized, sitting there in that dining room with the ocean rolling beneath us, that I didn't really know what my son did day to day. I hadn't asked in years. We'd become the kind of family that exchanged pleasantries and surface-level stories, avoiding anything that might require real vulnerability or honesty. Sloane returned with Amelia, and I watched them too. Sloane, 39, a former marketing executive who'd left her career to raise Amelia. She was beautiful in that carefully maintained way, with highlights that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget and a wardrobe that spoke of personal shoppers and boutique stores. She'd always been polite to me, if somewhat distant. I'd attributed it to generational differences, to the natural reserve between mothers and daughters-in-law. But now, with that napkin burning a hole in my pocket where I'd hastily shoved it, I noticed things I'd chosen to overlook. The way Sloane's eyes would go cold when she thought no one was watching. The impatience in her voice when Amelia asked too many questions. The way she and Tobias communicated in glances and half-sentences that excluded everyone else. "Grandma, look what I drew." Amelia pushed her coloring book toward me, and I forced myself to smile at her picture of a family on a boat. My heart broke a little, looking at her innocent face. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." That night, I couldn't sleep. The ship's gentle rocking that had lulled me to sleep on previous nights now felt ominous, as if we were being carried toward something inevitable and terrible. I kept the napkin on my nightstand, reading it over and over by the light of my phone. Room 847. The number seemed to pulse with significance. Marina had risked something by giving me that note. In the darkness of my cabin, With the ocean whispering against the hull, I made a decision. Tomorrow, while everyone was occupied, I would go to that room. I would find out what truth I was supposed to see. I just had no idea that the truth would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family, about my life, and about the price of the sacrifices I'd made. Chapter 2. The investigation begins. Morning came with a brilliance that felt like mockery. Sunlight streamed through my cabin window, painting everything in cheerful gold, while my stomach churned with dread. I'd barely slept, my mind spinning through possibilities until exhaustion finally dragged me under. Sometime around 4 a.m, the ship's daily newsletter had been slipped under my door, advertising today's activities: a wine tasting, a Broadway review, pool games for families, normal, pleasant diversions for people whose worlds weren't tilting on their axis. I dressed carefully, choosing comfortable walking shoes and a cardigan with deep pockets. The napkin was still there, its message burned into my memory. Room 847. Come alone if you need answers. At breakfast, I observed my family like a stranger would. Tobias wore designer sunglasses even indoors, checking his phone constantly. Sloane picked at a fruit plate, her perfectly manicured nails drumming on the table in a rhythm that matched my anxious heartbeat. Amelia seemed subdued, quieter than a 10-year-old should be on a luxury cruise. I thought I'd skip the shore excursion today, I announced, trying to keep my voice light. These old bones need a rest. Sloane's eyes flickered to Tobias before she smiled. Are you sure, Judith? We were looking forward to Cozumel. Judith. My name in her mouth always sounded slightly formal, slightly cold. I'd named myself after my grandmother, a woman who'd survived the Depression by being tougher than the world expected her to be. I wondered what Grandma Judith would think of this situation. I'm sure. You all go enjoy yourselves. I'll be fine here. Tobias leaned over and kissed my cheek, and I caught a whiff of his cologne, the expensive kind that came in heavy glass bottles. Rest up, Mom. We'll bring you back something nice. After they left, I waited an hour, watching from my balcony as passengers streamed down the gangway to the dock. The ship was emptying out, which was exactly what I needed. Room 847 was on the 8th deck, in the crew quarters section that passengers rarely ventured into. The hallways here were narrower, the carpet worn, the lighting more utilitarian. I passed a few crew members who nodded politely, but seemed too busy with their duties to question why a passenger was wandering their corridors. When I reached 847, my hand trembled as I raised it to knock. Before my knuckles could connect with the door, it opened. Marina stood there, and in the harsh hallway light, she looked older than I'd initially thought. Tired, scared. Mrs. Caldwell, thank God you came. Please, quickly. She pulled me inside, checking the hallway before closing the door. The room was tiny, a single bed, a small desk, a porthole window that showed nothing but sky. Photos were taped to the wall, family pictures that reminded me this young woman had a life beyond this ship. People who loved her. I'm taking a huge risk, Marina said, wringing her hands. But I couldn't not say something, not after what I've seen. What have you seen? My voice came out steadier than I felt. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. I work in the ship's spa sometimes. And your daughter-in-law, Mrs. Sloane Caldwell. She comes in often, always alone. 3 days ago, I was in the storage room next to one of our private treatment rooms, and I heard her on a phone call. Marina's finger hovered over her phone screen. I wouldn't normally record anyone, but something about her tone, the thing she was saying, it made me uneasy. So she trailed off, looking ashamed. Let me hear it. The recording was muffled, but Sloane's voice was unmistakable, that particular sharp edge she got when she was irritated. I don't care how much longer we have to keep up this charade. The cruise was his idea, not mine. Yes, the old woman suspects nothing. She's so desperate to believe we're a happy family. Once we get back and everything's finalized, we can... No, Tobias is handling his part. He's good at pretending. The timing has to be perfect. We've worked too long on this. The recording cut off. Marina looked at me with pity in her eyes. There's more. I've seen Mr. Caldwell meeting with a man, always late at night, always looking around like he's afraid of being caught. And I've noticed their cabin door, how it's never open when it should be, how they send Amelia to the kids' club for hours every day. I sat down on her narrow bed because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. The room spun slightly, and I couldn't tell if it was the ship's motion or my world coming apart. Why are you telling me this? I whispered. Marina knelt in front of me, her young face earnest. Because I have a grandmother. She raised me when my parents couldn't. If someone was using her, plotting something, I'd want someone to tell her, even if it hurt. The pain in my chest was physical, a crushing weight that made breathing difficult. All those years I'd worked double shifts to pay for Tobias's education, to buy him his first car, to help with the down payment on their house. The birthdays I'd missed, the exhaustion I'd pushed through, the dreams I'd deferred. What do you think they're planning? I don't know for certain, Marina admitted. But Mrs. Caldwell, the way your daughter-in-law talks about you, it's not kind. And whatever they're planning, it involves money. A lot of it. I heard them mention accounts, transfers, timing. My mind clicked into the analytical mode I'd used in the ER, pushing emotion aside to focus on facts. I was 72, healthy, with a modest but comfortable savings from a lifetime of careful financial management. I owned my house outright, had a decent pension, and some investments my late husband had left me. Do you think they're trying to steal from me? Marina looked away. I think it might be worse than that, Mrs. Caldwell. The words hung between us like poison gas. Worse than theft. What could be worse? Then I remembered something. 6 months ago, Tobias had asked me to sign some papers. Something about estate planning, making things easier for when I passed. He'd been so attentive that day, bringing me lunch, spending hours with me. I'd been so happy to have his attention that I'd barely read the documents before signing. I need to see my lawyer, I said, standing up on legs that felt like water. The ship has satellite internet, Marina offered. It's expensive, but I don't care about the cost. She showed me how to access the ship's business center, a small room on the 5th deck with computers and a printer. I paid the exorbitant fees and logged into my email, my hands shaking so badly I had to type my password 3 times. I sent an urgent message to my lawyer, Gerald Ashworth, who'd handled my affairs for 20 years. I tried to keep it vague, not wanting to sound paranoid, but asking him to review any recent documents I'd signed, any changes to my accounts or estate planning. His response came faster than I expected. Gerald was semi-retired now, but we'd been friends for years, had attended the same church, had buried our spouses within months of each other. Judith, I'm concerned by your email. Can you call me? I need to discuss something important about those power of attorney documents you signed. Power of attorney. The words made my blood run cold. I picked up the business center's phone with trembling hands and dialed his number, not caring about the international charges. Gerald, it's Judith. What did I sign? His voice was grave. Judith, those documents your son brought to you, they weren't just estate planning. You granted him and his wife comprehensive power of attorney, including medical power of attorney. Combined with some other forms, they have legal control over your finances and healthcare decisions. I need to ask you directly. Did you understand what you were signing? The room tilted. I gripped the desk to steady myself. No, I whispered. He told me it was just to make things easier, in case something happened to me. Judith, I'm going to be frank. With these documents, they could potentially have you declared incompetent, move you into a facility against your will, and take control of all your assets. It's not common, but it happens, especially when there's a significant amount of money involved. My life savings, my home, my independence. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed to build, and I'd handed it over with a signature because my son had smiled at me and pretended to care. How do I fix this? You need to revoke the power of attorney immediately, in writing, with witnesses. And Judith, I'm sorry to say this, but you should consider filing a police report. What you're describing sounds like elder financial abuse. The words landed like blows. Elder abuse, my own son, the baby I'd rocked through colic, the toddler I'd taught to read, the young man I'd sent to college with pride bursting in my chest. After I hung up with Gerald, I sat in that business center for a long time, staring at nothing. The ship hummed around me, carrying hundreds of people toward destinations they'd chosen, adventures they'd planned. None of them knew that my entire world had just collapsed. But I was my grandmother's namesake. She'd survived worse, and I would survive this. I just needed to know the whole truth first. Because if there was one thing I'd learned in my years as a nurse, it was that you can't treat a disease until you know exactly what you're dealing with. I pulled out the napkin again and read Marina's words one more time. When you see the truth. I hadn't seen all of it yet. Not even close. Chapter 3. Unraveling Deceptions. I emerged from the business center feeling like I'd aged 10 years in an hour. The ship's cheerful atmosphere, the laughter echoing from the pool deck, the smell of sunscreen and cocktails, all of it felt obscene against the darkness unfurling in my chest. My phone buzzed. A text from Tobias. Having a great time in Cozumel. Emilia found the most beautiful shells. See you at dinner, Mom. Love you. Love you. 2 words that used to fill my heart now felt like acid on an open wound. I needed to think, to plan, but my mind kept circling back to the same question. Why? Why would my son do this to me? Was I really such a burden? Had I been so blind that I'd missed signs of his resentment, his greed? I found myself walking to the ship's upper deck, the one where few passengers ventured because it was reserved mostly for maintenance access. The wind was stronger up here, tangling my gray hair and making my eyes water, or maybe that was the tears I'd been holding back. Mrs. Caldwell. I spun around. A man in an officer's uniform stood a few feet away, his weathered face concerned. His name tag identified him as Chief Security Officer Harlow Dempster. I'm sorry to startle you, he said, his voice carrying a faint Australian accent. Marina contacted me. She thought you might need help. I studied him warily. Did she tell you why? Enough to know that you're in a difficult situation. Mrs. Caldwell, I've been working cruise ships for 20 years, and I've seen a lot of things. Family disputes, theft, all manner of human behavior. If someone is trying to defraud you or hurt you, it's my job to help. Something about his directness, the lack of pity in his eyes, made me trust him. I was so tired of carrying this alone. I think my son and daughter-in-law are planning to steal everything from me, I said flatly. And I think they might be planning to have me committed or worse. Dempster didn't look shocked. He pulled out a small notebook. Tell me everything. So I did. The power of attorney I'd unwittingly signed. The recorded conversation Marina had captured. The phone calls Tobias made at odd hours. The cold calculation I'd finally noticed in Sloane's eyes. As I spoke, Dempster took notes, his expression growing grimmer. There's something else you should know, he said when I finished. We've been monitoring some unusual activity in one of the ship's shore excursion accounts. Money being moved around, small amounts, but in patterns that raised flags. The account is registered to a company called Caldwell Holdings LLC, my son's company, the one he told me was doing so well. How much money are we talking about? Over the past 6 months. Close to $200,000, moved in increments small enough not to trigger automatic alerts. The ship's excursion business is cash-heavy, and there are ways to manipulate bookings if you know the system. Tobias organized this cruise, I said slowly, pieces clicking into place. He insisted on booking everything, handling all the details. I thought he was just being a good son. Dempster's expression was grim. Mrs. Caldwell, I need to be straight with you. If your son has been embezzling from the cruise line, that's a serious crime. But combined with what you've told me about your personal situation, I'm worried this goes deeper. People who are desperate enough to commit fraud are capable of more. The implication hung heavy between us. I thought of the sleeping pills Sloane had given me 2 nights ago, claiming I'd seemed stressed and needed rest. I hadn't taken them, put off by something in her too bright smile. Now I wondered what would have happened if I had. What do? I asked, and hated how small my voice sounded. We document everything. We keep you safe. And when we return to Miami in 4 days, we have enough evidence to make sure they face consequences. He paused. But I need to ask you something difficult. How far are you willing to go? These are your family, your son, your granddaughter, Emilia. My heart twisted. That innocent little girl, caught in the middle of her parents and schemes. What would happen to her if Tobias and Sloane were arrested? I need to protect my granddaughter, I said firmly. Whatever else happens, she can't be hurt by this. Dempster nodded. Then we need to be smart. We can't tip them off that you know. Can you act normally around them? Could I? Could I sit across from my son at dinner and pretend everything was fine while knowing he'd planned to destroy me? I thought of my grandmother again, of the stories she'd told about surviving the depression, about doing what needed to be done even when it broke your heart. I can do it, I said. That evening, I dressed for dinner as if it were any other night. My hands were steady as I applied my lipstick, chose my earrings, In the mirror, I looked like the same woman who'd boarded this ship 5 days ago, excited for family time, grateful for my son's generosity in planning this trip. But I wasn't that woman anymore. That woman had been naive, willfully blind to truths she didn't want to see. The woman staring back at me now had harder eyes, a tighter jaw. This woman was a survivor. The dining room was crowded, humming with conversation and the clink of wine glasses. Tobias and Sloane were already seated, Amelia between them, when I arrived. "Mom, there you are." We were starting to worry. Tobias stood to pull out my chair, ever the gentleman. I let him. I sat down and accepted the menu with a smile. "Sorry, I'm late. I was video chatting with some friends from the hospital. You know how I lose track of time when I get talking about the old days." The lie came easily. Too easily, perhaps. I was getting good at deception, learning from the masters seated across from me. "How was Cozumel?" I asked, spreading my napkin on my lap. Sloane launched into a description of their day, the ruins they'd seen, the beach club they'd visited. I watched her lips move, noticed how she touched Tobias's arm when she wanted to emphasize a point, how they shared looks that communicated whole conversations. They were a team. They'd always been a team, and I'd never been part of it. "Grandma, I got you a present." Amelia pulled a small wrapped package from her bag. Inside was a bracelet made of local beads, bright blues and greens and yellows strung on elastic thread, something a child would choose, full of color and optimism. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Help me put it on." As Amelia fastened the bracelet around my wrist, her small fingers careful and concentrated, I felt tears threaten. She was innocent in all this. Whatever happened, I had to make sure she knew I loved her. "Amelia, why don't you go play with the other kids in the family lounge?" Sloane suggested. "Mommy and Daddy need to talk to Grandma about grown-up things." My heart rate spiked. This was it. Whatever they'd been planning, whatever came next, it was happening now. Amelia skipped off, and I was alone with them. Tobias ordered wine, making small talk with the waiter. Sloane reapplied her lipstick, studying her reflection in a compact mirror. Everything seemed normal, but I could feel the tension building, like the pressure before a storm. "Mom," Tobias began, reaching across the table to take my hand. "We need to talk about something important, about your future." I let him hold my hand, even though my skin crawled at his touch. "Oh, Sloane and I have been worried about you. You're getting older and living alone in that big house. It's not safe. We've been looking at some really nice assisted living facilities." "I'm 72, not 92, I interrupted gently. "I'm perfectly capable of living alone." "But are you?" Sloane leaned forward, her expression concerned in a way that would have seemed genuine if I didn't know better. "You forgot to take your blood pressure medication last week. You mentioned you couldn't remember where you'd parked at the grocery store. These little things add up, Judith. Little things I'd mentioned in passing. Normal absent-mindedness that happens to everyone. Now weaponized against me. We found this wonderful place in Tampa," Tobias continued. "Beautiful grounds, full medical staff, activities every day. You'd have so much fun, make new friends. And your house," Sloane added. "We could sell it, invest that money for your care. Make sure you're taken care of for the rest of your life." There it was. Sell my home, the one my husband and I had bought 40 years ago, where I'd raised my son, where every room held memories. Put me in a facility where they could control my access to the outside world, to my finances, to anyone who might question what they were doing. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing my child's face. "Let me think about it," I said carefully. "It's a big decision." "Of course," Tobias said, but something flickered in his eyes. Impatience. He'd expected me to agree immediately, to be grateful for their concern. They didn't know I knew, and that was my only advantage. The rest of dinner was torture, making conversation about nothing while my mind raced. When I finally escaped to my cabin, I locked the door and put a chair against it for good measure. Then I called Dempster. "They made their move," I told him. "They want to put me in assisted living and sell my house. We need to move faster than I thought," he said. "I'm going to need you to be very brave, Mrs. Caldwell. Can you do something for me tomorrow? Anything. I need you to tell them yes. Tell them you've thought about it and you agree. We need them to feel confident, to think they've won. Meanwhile, I'll be gathering more evidence, building the case. Can you do that? Can you lie to your son?" I thought about it for only a moment. Yes, I can do that. Because the son I'd raised, the one I'd loved and sacrificed for, was gone. If he'd ever really existed at all. La Cerne. Chapter 4. The Confrontation. The next morning brought rain, the first weather we'd had since leaving port. The ocean churned gray and restless beneath a steel sky, and the ship pitched enough that some passengers complained of seasickness. I welcomed it. The storm outside matched the one in my heart. I met Dempster in his office, a cramped space deep in the ship's administrative corridors. He had papers spread across his desk, printouts of financial records, screenshots from security cameras, a timeline of events that painted a damning picture. "Your son has been skimming from the cruise line's shore excursion fund for 8 months, he said, pointing to highlighted figures. But that's just the beginning. Look at this. He showed me bank statements he'd obtained through legal channels I didn't fully understand. My accounts, ones I barely looked at anymore, trusting Tobias to help me manage them since he was, after all, in finance. Except he'd been slowly draining them. Small amounts at first, then larger. 50,000 had disappeared over the past year. Moved into accounts I didn't recognize. How? I whispered. The power of attorney you signed. He's been using it to access your accounts, transfer money, all legally because you gave him permission. Dempster's voice was gentle. I'm sorry, Mrs. Caldwell. I've seen a lot of things in my career, but I never get used to family doing this to each other. I sat down heavily. $50,000. Almost half my liquid savings. Gone. And I'd never noticed because I'd trusted him. There's more, Dempster continued. We pulled the security footage from the spa. The day Marina recorded that conversation, there were other conversations. Your son and daughter-in-law meeting with a man named Dexter Finch. He's a lawyer, specializes in estate planning and less publicly in helping people navigate the gray areas of elder care laws. He showed me the footage. Tobias and Sloane in a corner of the ship's library, heads bent close to a thin man in an expensive suit. Money exchanged hands. Documents were passed. The whole scene looked like what it was, a conspiracy. What's their endgame? I asked. Based on what we've found, I believe they plan to have you declared incompetent shortly after this cruise. They've been documenting what they claim are signs of cognitive decline, memory issues, confusion. With the power of attorney already in place and a doctor willing to sign off on an evaluation, they could have you committed to a memory care facility within weeks. Memory care. The words made my blood run cold. But I'm not confused. I don't have dementia. I know that. You know that. But once someone is in the system, especially an elderly person without strong advocates, it's very difficult to get out. They could keep you there indefinitely, controlling your finances, selling your assets, and no one would question it because they're your loving family, taking care of you. I felt sick. This wasn't just theft. It was a plan to erase me, to lock me away while they stole everything I'd worked for. And Amelia? Dempster's expression softened. She's 10. In any legal proceedings, she'd likely stay with her parents unless there was evidence of direct harm to her. I'm sorry. My granddaughter, growing up with these people, learning that this was how you treated family, the cycle would continue. I need to talk to them, I said suddenly. I need to hear them say it. Mrs. Caldwell, I don't think that's... I need to... I interrupted. For myself, I need to look my son in the eye and hear the truth. Can you wire me? Record it. Dempster studied me for a long moment. Yes, but if things go wrong, if they suspect, it could be dangerous. I've faced dangerous things before, I said, thinking of codes in the ICU, of holding a patient's hand as they died, of the moment I realized my husband was gone, and I'd have to go on alone. I can handle this. He fitted me with a small recording device, hidden in a pendant I wore around my neck. If you feel unsafe at any point, press this button twice. I'll have security there in under a minute. That afternoon, I invited Tobias and Sloane to my cabin for coffee. I made sure Amelia was in the Kids' Eye Club first, supervised and safe. They arrived smiling, Sloane carrying a folder I recognized, estate planning documents. They were moving fast now, eager to close the trap. Mom, we're so glad you wanted to talk. Tobias settled into the chair near the window, looking relaxed and confident. We've been so worried about you. Have you? I kept my voice neutral, pouring coffee from the service I'd ordered. Why exactly have you been worried, son? Sloane exchanged a glance with Tobias. Well, as we mentioned last night, there have been signs, forgetting things, confusion. Name one specific instance, I said calmly. They both paused. Sloane recovered first. Just last month, you called Tobias 3 times asking if you'd remembered to turn off your stove. Because I had a friend whose house burned down from leaving the stove on, I countered. It's called being cautious, not confused. Mom, why are you being defensive? Tobias's voice took on an edge. We're trying to help you. Help me. Is that what you call stealing $50,000 from my accounts? The silence that fell was absolute. Tobias went pale. Sloane's perfectly maintained composure cracked. I don't know what you're talking about, Tobias said, but his voice shook. I know everything, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The power of attorney you tricked me into signing, the money you've been embezzling from the cruise line, the lawyer you've been meeting with to have me declared incompetent, your plans to put me in a facility and steal everything I've worked for. Sloane stood abruptly. You can't prove any of that. Actually, the ship's security has extensive documentation, bank records, video footage, recorded conversations. I looked at my son, who couldn't meet my eyes. Why, Tobias? Was I really such a burden? Did you hate me so much? It's not about hate, he said quietly, and finally looked at me. What I saw in his eyes was worse than hatred. It was indifference. It's about money, Mom. It's always about money. Do you know how much it costs to maintain our lifestyle? Amelia's private school, the house, the cars. And you're just sitting on all this money, living in that old house, pinching pennies like you're still poor. That's my money. I earned it. And we're your family, Sloane snapped. You should want to help us. Instead, you hoard it, talking about leaving it all to charity when you die. What about your son? What about your granddaughter? I stood up, and despite being smaller, older, weaker than either of them, I felt powerful. My granddaughter would have been provided for. I have a trust set up for her education, her future. But you've gotten everything from me already. I put you through college, Tobias. I helped you buy your first house. I've given you money every time you've asked. No questions. And it was never enough, because you made me feel guilty for every dollar. Tobias shot back, his own anger rising now. Everything came with strings, Wagat, with expectations. Do you know what it's like? Having a mother who sacrificed so much. How can I ever live up to that? How can I ever be enough? The words hit like physical blows. All those years, all that sacrifice, and he'd experienced it as a burden, as a debt he could never repay. So your solution was to steal from me. My voice broke. To plan to lock me away like I was nothing. The plan was for you to be taken care of, Sloane said coldly. In a nice facility, with round-the-clock care, we would have visited, until I died, and you could take everything. Neither of them denied it. There was a knock at the door. Dempster entered with 2 uniformed security officers. Tobias Caldwell, Sloane Caldwell. You need to come with us. The FBI is waiting to speak with you about wire fraud and elder abuse. The look on Tobias's face as they led him away would haunt me. Not remorse, not shame, just fury that he'd been caught. Saturn Chapter 5. Broken Pieces. The ship's holding area was really just a modified storage room with a security guard posted outside. Through the small window in the door, I could see Tobias and Sloane sitting on metal chairs, not speaking to each other. Sloane stared at the wall, her perfect makeup smudged. Tobias had his head in his hands. My son. My little boy, who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms, who'd proudly brought me flowers he'd picked from the neighbor's garden, who'd cried when his father died and held me while I cried too. Where had that boy gone? When had he become this stranger who could look at me and see only money? Mrs. Caldwell, you should rest. Dempster appeared at my elbow, his expression concerned. This has been a traumatic day. Amelia, I said. Someone needs to be with Amelia when she finds out. Child Services is being contacted. Since we're in international waters, it's complicated, but arrangements are being made. She'll be taken care of by strangers, processed through a system. I thought of her small face, the way she'd carefully fastened that beaded bracelet around my wrist, the innocent love in her eyes. I want to see her, I said, before they tell her. Please, Dempster hesitated, then nodded. I'll arrange it. But Mrs. Caldwell, what are you going to say to her? I didn't know. How do you explain to a 10-year-old that her parents are criminals? That the grandmother who loves her had to turn them in? That everything she thought was safe and certain has just shattered? They brought Amelia to a small lounge typically used for private parties. She came in confused, looking around for her parents, her eyes landing on me with relief. Grandma, where's Mommy and Daddy? The lady said I had to come here. I knelt down in front of her, my old knees protesting, and took her small hands in mine. This close, I could see how much she looked like Tobias had at her age. The same gray-green eyes, the same stubborn chin. Sweetie, something has happened. Your Mommy and Daddy made some mistakes. Big mistakes. And they have to talk to some important people about it. What kind of mistakes? Her voice was small, uncertain. Grown-up mistakes. Money mistakes. I struggled to find words she could understand. Sometimes people make bad choices, even people we love, and those choices have consequences. Are they going to jail? She was smarter than they'd given her credit for. I don't know, baby. Maybe. Tears welled in her eyes, and she threw her arms around my neck. Don't leave me, Grandma. Please don't leave me too. The "too" broke my heart. How many times had she been left? Sent to kids, clubs, and nannies while her parents lived their important lives. I'm here, I whispered into her hair. I'm not going anywhere. But even as I said it, I knew it was a promise I might not be able to keep. What would happen to Amelia? Would she go into foster care? Would distant relatives I barely knew claim her? Would Tobias and Sloane retain custody even from prison, if it came to that? The social worker who arrived was kind but professional. Her name was Ms. Okafor, and she had soft eyes and a gentle voice. Mrs. Caldwell, I understand you're the child's grandmother. Yes. And you're the one who reported the parents for elder abuse and fraud? Yes. She made notes in her tablet. I'll need to conduct an assessment, but given the circumstances, placing Amelia with you might be complicated. There could be questions about your relationship with the parents, about why you didn't notice the signs earlier. The implication stung, that I'd been negligent, blind, part of the problem. I was lied to by people I trusted, I said sharply. That doesn't make me unfit to care for my granddaughter. Of course not, Ms. Okafor said soothingly. But these things take time. Legal processes. For now, Amelia will need to be placed in temporary care. No, Amelia's wail cut through the room. I want to stay with Grandma. I held her tighter. This child who'd done nothing wrong but was about to be punished anyway. How long will the process take? Days. Weeks. It depends on many factors. Days and weeks that Amelia would spend with strangers, in a system that meant well but couldn't replace family, if she even thought of me as family anymore. Would she grow to hate me for what I'd done to her parents? Would she understand when she was older that I'd had no choice? That night, after they'd taken Amelia away, screaming for me, after I'd signed more statements and answered more questions, I sat alone in my cabin and let myself fall apart. I cried for my son, the one I'd raised and the one he'd become. I cried for Amelia, innocent and confused. I cried for myself, for the years I'd wasted trusting people who'd never deserved it. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. You destroyed this family. I hope you're happy. Sloane. Somehow she'd gotten access to a phone. I stared at the message, then blocked the number, but her words echoed in my mind. Had I destroyed the family? Or had I simply revealed what it had always been? A structure built on lies and held together by my willful blindness. Marina came to see me the next morning, bringing tea and a gentle smile. I heard what happened, she said. I'm sorry it came to this. Are you? I asked bitterly. You started this. If you hadn't given me that note, they would have continued stealing from you. They would have locked you away, and you would never have known until it was too late. Her voice was firm. I know it hurts. But sometimes the truth has to hurt before it can heal. I wanted to argue, to rage at her for upending my life. But she was right. The pain I felt now was the pain of infection being cleaned out, necessary and terrible. What happens now? I asked. You keep living, Marina said simply. You're 72, not dead. You have years ahead of you. You get to decide what they look like. Years. It seemed both too much and not enough. Too much time to spend alone, without the family I'd built my life around. Not enough time to undo the damage, to build something new. The ship would dock in Miami tomorrow. The FBI would be waiting. Tobias and Sloan would be arrested, formally charged. The legal process would begin, slow and grinding. And I would have to figure out how to live with what I'd done, what they'd done, and who we all were when the masks came off. Chapter 6. The Testimony. 3 months after the cruise ended, I sat in a federal courtroom in Miami, my hands folded in my lap, waiting to testify against my son. The room was austere, all dark wood and serious faces, the weight of justice hanging heavy in the air. Tobias wouldn't look at me. He sat at the defense table in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension, his lawyer whispering in his ear. Sloan sat beside him, perfectly coiffed as always, her expression blank. Amelia was not in the courtroom. Thank God for small mercies. She was with foster parents in Orlando, nice people according to the social worker, but strangers nonetheless. I'd been allowed supervised visits once a month. She cried every time I left. The prosecution calls Judith Caldwell to the stand. I stood on unsteady legs. The bailiff helped me navigate the small step up to the witness box. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as if there could be any truth in this room that wasn't painful. The prosecutor was a young woman named Reeves, sharp and efficient. She walked me through the events systematically. The cruise, the note from Marina, the discovery of the theft, the recorded conversation. My voice stayed steady, clinical, like I was giving a report to a doctor instead of condemning my own child. Mrs. Caldwell, can you explain the power of attorney document you signed? My son told me it was routine estate planning, that it would make things easier if something happened to me. I trusted him. Did you read the document before signing? Not carefully. My son was there, being so attentive, spending time with me. I was happy to have his attention. The admission hurt. I signed it because he asked me to. And did you understand that this gave him legal control over your finances and medical decisions? No. If I had understood, I never would have signed. Reeves showed me bank statements, highlighted the withdrawals. Did you authorize these transfers? No. Did you know they were happening? No. Mrs. Caldwell, over the course of 8 months, your son and daughter-in-law stole approximately $57,000 from you. Can you tell the court how that money was earned? I took a breath. I was a nurse for 43 years. I worked double shifts, holidays, nights. Every dollar in that account represented hours of my life, sacrifices I made. I lived frugally so I could save, so I'd have security in my old age and something to leave to my granddaughter. And instead, your son stole it. Objection. Tobias's lawyer jumped up, leading the witness. Sustained, the judge said. But the truth hung in the air anyway. My son had stolen from me. That was the reality, no matter how the lawyers phrased it. The defense attorney's cross-examination was brutal. He painted me as a controlling mother who'd held money over her son's head his whole life, using financial assistance to manipulate. He implied I was vengeful, angry that my son had his own life and family. Isn't it true, Mrs. Caldwell, that you frequently criticized how your son and daughter-in-law spent money? I occasionally suggested they budget more carefully. You disapproved of their lifestyle. I worried they were living beyond their means. And when your son asked to borrow money, you made him feel guilty about it, didn't you? I paused. Had I? I'd always tried to help when Tobias needed money, but had I made him feel small for needing it? Had my sacrifices become weapons I wielded without realizing it? I may have, I admitted quietly. I never meant to make him feel bad, but maybe I did. The lawyer pounced. So you admit you used money to control your son? No, I used money to help him. There's a difference. Is there? You paid for his education, his first car, his wedding, the down payment on his house. Didn't all of that come with expectations, obligations? I expected gratitude, love, honesty. Is that wrong? You expected him to live the life you wanted him to live. And when he didn't, when he chose his own path, his own priorities, you punished him. I didn't. You reported him to the authorities. You're testifying against him in court. Your own son. What kind of mother does that? The question landed like a slap. What kind of mother did that? I looked at Tobias then, really looked at him, and saw him meeting my eyes for the first time since the trial started. The kind who refuses to be victimized, I said quietly, even by her own child. Something flickered into Tobias's expression. Pain? Regret? It was gone too quickly to be sure. When I stepped down from the stand, my legs were shaking. I'd told the truth, but the truth had cost me. I could feel the judgment in the courtroom. People wondering what I'd done to drive my son to this. What kind of family dynamics had created this tragedy? During the lunch recess, I sat alone in a small witness room, picking at a sandwich I couldn't taste. Gerald Ashworth, my lawyer, found me there. You did well, he said gently. Did I? I feel like I just threw my son to the wolves. He threw himself there when he stole from you, when he planned to have you committed. You're not responsible for his choices, Judith. Then why does it feel like I am? Gerald sat down across from me, his kind, weathered face full of understanding. Because you're a mother. Because even when our children hurt us, we still love them. That's what makes us human. But it doesn't mean we have to let them destroy us. The afternoon session brought more witnesses. Marina, nervous but determined, describing what she'd overheard. Dempster, professional and thorough, laying out the evidence of embezzlement. Financial experts explaining how the money had been moved, hidden, stolen. Tobias's defense tried to paint it as a misunderstanding. A son trying to help his aging mother by managing her finances. But the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution had emails, text messages, recorded conversations where Tobias and Sloan discussed their plans in explicit detail. On the third day of trial, the prosecution played the recording from the ship's spa. Sloan's voice filled the courtroom, sharp and calculating. The old woman suspects nothing. She's so desperate to believe we're a happy family. I watched Amelia's parents as they listened to themselves being exposed. Sloan's face remained impassive, but Tobias's jaw tightened, his hands clenched into fists. When the recording ended, the silence was damning. The defense rested without calling Tobias to testify. They knew he'd incriminate himself if he opened his mouth. Sloan took the stand instead, poised and composed, claiming she'd been following her husband's lead, that she'd believed everything was legal and appropriate. I thought we were helping Judith, she said, her voice trembling just slightly. Perfect performance. She seemed so confused sometimes, forgetting things. We were genuinely worried about her safety. The prosecutor tore her apart on cross-examination, pointing out that her concern had conveniently coincided with access to my bank accounts. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they filed back in, their faces were serious, determined. On the charge of wire fraud, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of elder financial abuse, how do you find? Guilty. The verdicts kept coming. Guilty, guilty, guilty. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated. Instead, I just felt hollow. The judge set sentencing for 2 months later. Tobias and Sloan were remanded into custody, bail revoked. As the bailiffs led them away, Sloan shot me a look of pure hatred. But Tobias looked broken. Our eyes met for just a second, and I saw him mouth something. I'm sorry. Too little. Too late. But maybe something. Dattari. Chapter 7. Rebuilding. Sentencing day arrived on a crisp October morning. The leaves in Miami were turning, summer's heat finally releasing its grip. I dressed carefully in a simple navy dress, sensible shoes. I looked like what I was, a 72-year-old woman who'd been through hell and somehow survived. The courtroom was less crowded this time. The media had moved on to fresher scandals. It was just me, the lawyers, and the 2 people who used to be my family. The judge was a woman in her 60s, Judge Patricia Moreno, with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too much human weakness to be surprised by anything. Before I pronounce sentence, she said, I want to address the defendants directly. What you did to your mother, Mrs. Caldwell, represents one of the most egregious betrayals of trust I've encountered in my years on the bench. You didn't just steal money. You attempted to steal her autonomy, her dignity, her very identity. She paused, letting the words settle. Mr. Caldwell, you are sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Mrs. Caldwell, you will serve 2 years, followed by 2 years of supervised release. You will both be required to make full restitution to Mrs. Judith Caldwell in the amount of $57,000, plus legal fees and damages. 3 years, 2 years. It seemed both too much and not enough. Too much time for Amelia to be without her parents. Not enough for what they'd tried to do to me. Your Honor, Tobias's lawyer stood. My client would like to make a statement. Judge Moreno nodded. Tobias rose slowly, looking older than his 47 years. Prison had not been kind to him, even in just a few months. He looked thin, worn. Mom, he said, his voice cracking, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I can forgive myself. I told myself I was entitled to that money, that you owed me for all the years of living in your shadow, feeling like I could never be enough. But that was a lie I told myself to justify doing something unforgivable. He wiped his eyes. Real tears, not performance. I stole from you. I planned to lock you away. I betrayed every value you tried to teach me. And the worst part is, I knew exactly what I was doing. I wasn't confused or misled. I made a choice. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I sat frozen, unable to respond. Part of me wanted to stand up, to go to him, to hold him like I had when he was small and afraid. But I couldn't. That boy was gone. Or maybe he'd never existed, and I'd just been loving the idea of him all these years. Do you wish to respond, Mrs. Caldwell? Judge Moreno asked gently. I stood on shaking legs. I do, Your Honor. I turned to face Tobias. You're right. I don't forgive you. Maybe someday I will. But today, I can't. You didn't just steal money from me. You stole my trust, my peace of mind, my belief in family. You made me question every memory, every moment of your childhood, wondering if any of it was real or if I was just fooling myself. My voice grew stronger. But I want you to know something. I don't regret being your mother. I don't regret the sacrifices I made, even knowing how this ended, because those sacrifices made me who I am, someone strong enough to stand here today. You tried to break me, to erase me, and you failed. I looked at Sloan. And you came into my family and saw only what you could take. You never tried to know me, to care about me. I was just an obstacle to you, something to be managed and eventually disposed of. Sloan's mask cracked, just for a moment. I saw something that might have been shame. I hope you both find a way to become better people, I said. For Amelia's sake, if not your own. Because that little girl deserves parents who teach her that love isn't about what you can take. It's about what you give. I sat down, my heart pounding. Judge Moreno nodded approvingly. Bailiff, please escort the defendants. As they led Tobias away, he looked back at me one more time. I didn't look away. I wanted him to see that I was still here, still standing, still breathing. He hadn't won. After the sentencing, Gerald took me to lunch at a quiet restaurant near the courthouse. What happens to Amelia now? I asked, pushing food around my plate. The state is willing to place her with you, if you want custody. Your age and health will be factors. But given everything that's happened, they believe you're the best option. Do you think I can do it? Raise a 10-year-old at my age? Gerald smiled. Judith, you survived 43 years as an ER nurse. A year of being defrauded by your own son, a federal trial, and you're still here. I think you can do anything you set your mind to. I thought about Amelia, her beaded bracelet that I still wore every day, her little arms around my neck. She needed me, and maybe, I realized, I needed her too. Then let's start the paperwork, I said. The custody process took 6 months. 6 months of home visits, psychological evaluations, character references, 6 months of supervised visits with Amelia, where we slowly rebuilt trust that her parents had shattered. Do you hate Mommy and Daddy? She asked me once, sitting in the visiting room at the foster family's house. No, sweetheart. I'm very hurt and angry at what they did, but hate, that's a heavy thing to carry, and I don't want to carry it. Will they ever come home? I chose my words carefully. They made mistakes, and they have to face the consequences. But they're still your parents, and when they get out of prison, if they've learned and changed, maybe you can have a relationship with them. But it will be different than before. Will you still be my grandma, even if everything's different? I pulled her close. Always. No matter what changes, that will never change. When the judge finally granted me custody, it was a quiet ceremony in a small office. Amelia held my hand tightly as the social worker explained the terms, the support services available, the checkpoints we'd need to meet. "Congratulations, Mrs. Caldwell," the social worker said. "You're officially Amelia's legal guardian." Amelia looked up at me with those gray-green eyes so much like her father's. "Can I call you Grandma, Mom?" I laughed, the first real laugh in months. "You can call me whatever you want, baby." We moved into my house together, and slowly, we built a new normal. I enrolled her in a good public school, joined a support group for kinship caregivers, started seeing a therapist to work through the betrayal and loss. Amelia had her own therapist too, helping her process what her parents had done, the confusion and anger and grief. Some days were hard, when she'd cry for her mother or lash out in frustration. Some days were beautiful, when she'd laugh at something silly or curl up next to me on the couch to watch movies. Chapter 8. Letters from Prison. 6 months after gaining custody of Amelia, I received the first letter from Tobias. It came in a plain envelope with a prison return address, his familiar handwriting on the front. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Amelia was at school, the house quiet except for the tick of the old clock my husband had loved. I made myself tea, sat at the kitchen table where I'd fed Tobias breakfast 1,000 mornings, and finally opened the letter. "Dear Mom, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect anything from you anymore. But my therapist here says I should write anyway. That part of taking responsibility is facing what I've done, even if it's just on paper. I think about you every day, about Amelia, about the family I destroyed. They have me in classes here. Anger management, financial responsibility, substance abuse, even though that wasn't my problem. My problem was entitlement, selfishness, a fundamental failure of character. I tell myself I was raised better than this, but that's a cop-out, isn't it? Plenty of people are raised by difficult parents or in hard circumstances, and they don't steal from the people who love them. I made choices, bad ones, and blaming my upbringing or feeling inadequate or any of it doesn't change what I did. How's Amelia? They tell me you have custody now. I'm glad. I know that's rich, coming from me, but I am. She needs stability and love, and you can give her that. You always could. That's one thing I never doubted. Even when I was plotting against you, I knew you were a good person. Maybe that's what made it easier to justify, telling myself you were strong enough to handle it, that you'd be fine. But you weren't fine, were you? I broke something in you. I can tell from the way you looked at me during sentencing. I saw it, the moment when you stopped seeing me as your son and started seeing me as a stranger. I did that. I killed your son as surely as if I'd put a bullet in him, because that boy you raised is gone. I don't know if he ever really existed or if I've always been this person and just hid it better. I'm sorry. I know I said it in court, but I need you to know I mean it. Not because I think it changes anything, or because I want forgiveness, just because it's true, and you deserve to hear it as many times as I can say it. Take care of Amelia. Tell her I love her, if she can hear that without it hurting. Tobias. I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. What would I say? What words existed that could bridge the chasm between us? More letters came, one every few months. Tobias wrote about his life in prison, the routine of it, the other inmates, the slow creep of time. He wrote about his therapy, the things he was learning about himself that made him uncomfortable. He wrote about regret. I read them all. I never wrote back, but I kept them, chronologically ordered in that same drawer. Sloane wrote too, but her letters were different. They were full of excuses, justifications, subtle accusations that I'd driven them to it by being controlling and manipulative. Reading them made my blood boil, so eventually, I stopped. I marked her letters, returned to sender, and sent them back unopened. Amelia asked about her parents sometimes, in the careful way of children who know a topic is painful, but can't help their curiosity. "Does Daddy write to you?" "He does." "What does he say?" "That he's sorry, that he loves you, that he's trying to be better." "Do you believe him?" I considered the question. "I believe he's trying. Whether he succeeds is something only time will tell. Do you think I should write to him?" My first instinct was to say no, to protect her from potential hurt, but that would be doing what Tobias and Sloane had done, controlling someone else's choices because I thought I knew what was best. "That's your decision, sweetheart. If you want to, I'll help you. If you don't, that's okay too." She thought about it for days. I'd catch her sitting quietly, staring at nothing, working through complex emotions that no 10-year-old should have to navigate. Finally, She asked for help writing a letter. We sat together at the kitchen table, and she dictated while I wrote. Dear Daddy, Grandma says you write letters. She says you're sorry. I don't know if I forgive you yet. My therapist says I don't have to decide right now, that it's okay to be confused. I'm living with Grandma now. We have a good routine. I'm doing better in school. I made some new friends. Grandma takes me to therapy and to dance class and to the library. I miss you and Mommy sometimes, but I'm also mad at you. You hurt Grandma, and that hurt me too. Maybe someday I'll understand why you did what you did. But not yet. Amelia. I mailed it for her, and 3 weeks later, a response came addressed to Amelia. I let her open it privately, respecting her right to privacy with her father. She read it in her room, and when she came out, her eyes were red. He says he knows he hurt us. He says he's glad I'm safe with you. He says... She paused, struggling with the words. He says he's proud of me for being strong enough to be angry at him, that it means I know my own worth. That's a good thing for him to say. Is it weird that I miss him even though I'm mad at him? No, baby. That's love. It's messy and complicated and sometimes it doesn't make sense. But it's real. She hugged me then, and I held my daughter, and thought about the many forms love takes, the ways it bends and breaks and somehow continues. Chapter 9, Facing the Past. 2 years into Tobias's sentence, his lawyer contacted me about a family mediation session. It was a program the prison offered, a chance for inmates and their victims to meet, talk, hopefully find some closure. You're under no obligation to participate, Gerald told me when I asked his advice. This is entirely your choice. I thought about it for weeks. What would I gain from seeing Tobias again? What would it cost me? Amelia was 12 now, doing well in school, seeing her therapist less frequently. We'd built a good life together, stable and predictable. Did I want to disrupt that? But there were questions I still had, things that kept me awake some nights. Why had he really done it? When had he stopped seeing me as a mother and started seeing me as a mark? Had there been a specific moment, or had it been a gradual erosion? I'll do it, I told Gerald. But I want Amelia to come with me if she wants to. Amelia surprised me by saying yes. I want to tell him how I feel, she said with a maturity that broke my heart. My therapist says it might help. The mediation was held in a small conference room at the federal prison. Tobias was brought in wearing prison khakis, looking thinner and grayer than I'd ever seen him. When he saw Amelia, his eyes filled with tears. Baby girl, he whispered. I'm not a baby anymore, Amelia said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. I'm 12. I've had 2 birthdays since you left. The mediator, a kind-faced woman named Dr. Lyons, explained the ground rules. This was a safe space. Everyone would have a chance to speak without interruption. The goal wasn't to rehash blame, but to move toward understanding and healing. I'll start, I said. Tobias, I need to understand. When did you start planning this? When did you look at me and decide I was someone you could rob? He took a long breath. It wasn't one moment. It was gradual. After Dad died, you leaned on me so much, financially and emotionally, and at first, I was glad to help, proud to be the man of the family, but then it started feeling like a burden. Every time you needed something, every time you called, I felt this weight. So you resented me for needing you. I resented feeling like I could never do enough. You'd sacrificed so much, worked so hard, given up so much for me. How could I ever repay that? How could I ever be worthy of it? His voice cracked. So I started telling myself that you owed me, that all those sacrifices weren't gifts. They were debts you'd incurred that I had to collect. I absorbed this. You turned love into a transaction. Yes, and once I started thinking that way, it got easier to justify. The money you had just sitting there while Sloan and I struggled with bills, with keeping up appearances. It felt unfair. We weren't struggling, Amelia said suddenly. Then we had a huge house and nice cars and I went to private school. That's not struggling. Tobias looked at his daughter. You're right. We weren't struggling. We were living beyond our means and blaming your grandmother for not subsidizing our lifestyle. We were entitled and selfish. Why did you want to put Grandma in a home? Amelia's voice was small now, the hurt child showing through. Because she was going to figure it out eventually. We'd taken too much, moved too much money, and if she was in a facility, diagnosed with dementia, No one would believe her if she tried to fight it. We could control the narrative, control her. The casual way he said it, explaining their plan to erase me like it was a business strategy, made my stomach turn. "Do you understand what you almost did?" I asked quietly. "You almost stole my identity, my autonomy, everything that made me a person. You were going to lock me away and pretend I was senile so no one would listen to me. I know. Do you really understand the violation of that?" "I'm trying to." He leaned forward, his eyes desperate. "Mom, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, but I need you to know that I see it now. What I did, the enormity of it, and it's crushing me." "Good," I said, and my voice was hard. "It should crush you. You should carry it for the rest of your life." Dr. Lyons intervened gently. "Mrs. Caldwell, what would you need from Tobias to move toward healing?" I thought about it. What did I need? An apology. He'd given me that. Restitution. That was ordered by the court. Understanding. We were working on that. "I need to know that you understand you killed something," I said finally. "The relationship we had, the mother and son we were, that's dead. You murdered it, and there's no bringing it back. I know. And I need you to know that Amelia is mine now. Not legally in the sense that I'm trying to take her from you, but emotionally. She's my responsibility, my priority. When you get out, if you want a relationship with her, you'll have to earn it. From both of us." Tobias nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you for taking care of her. It's the only thing that makes this bearable, knowing she's with you." Amelia spoke up, her voice stronger now. "Daddy, I'm mad at you. I'm so mad sometimes I don't know what to do with it. You and Mommy were supposed to protect me, and instead, you hurt the person who actually did protect me. I know, baby. I'm sorry. Stop calling me baby." Her anger burst out, sudden and fierce. "I'm not your baby anymore. I'm Grandma's kid now. You don't get to use those names, those words that mean love, when you showed me what your version of love looks like." The pain on Tobias's face was almost too much to witness, but I was proud of Amelia, standing up for herself, naming her hurt. "You're right," he said. "I'm sorry, Amelia." We talked for another hour. It was exhausting, draining, like surgery without anesthesia. But when it was over, I felt lighter somehow. The questions I'd carried had answers now, even if those answers hurt. As we were leaving, Tobias called out, "Mom." I turned back. "I'm writing a letter to the parole board, asking them to deny my early release. I don't think I should get out early. I think I need to serve my full time, maybe longer. I wanted you to know." I nodded once and left. I didn't know if it was a genuine gesture or manipulation, and truthfully, I didn't care anymore. His choices were his own. My job was to move forward with Amelia, to build the life we deserved. In the car, Amelia was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I don't forgive him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Is that okay?" "Yes, sweetheart. It's okay. But I'm glad we went. I needed to tell him how I feel." "Me too." We drove home as the sun set, painting the Florida sky in oranges and purples. My hands on the wheel were steady. My heart was heavy but healing. And beside me, my granddaughter hummed quietly to the radio, evidence that even broken things could find new melodies. Chapter 10. New Beginnings. 3 years after the trial, I stood in my backyard watching Amelia's 13th birthday party. She'd invited a dozen friends, and they ran around the yard with the careless joy of teenagers, music blaring, soda flowing. I'd baked her favorite cake, chocolate with vanilla frosting, and decorated the yard with streamers in her school colors. Marina came to the party, surprising me. She'd stayed in touch over the years, sending cards at holidays, calling occasionally to check in. She'd left the cruise line and was working as a nurse now, ironically enough. "I can't believe how much she's grown," Marina said, standing beside me with a plate of cake. "And she's growing up to be a remarkable young woman," I said, watching Amelia laugh at something her best friend said. "Because of you. Because of both of us, in a way. If you hadn't given me that note, you'd have figured it out eventually. You're stronger than you knew." Was I? I supposed I was. At 75, I was raising a teenager, managing a household, volunteering at a local women's shelter where I helped other victims of elder abuse. I'd started a support group for kinship caregivers, Grandparents and great aunts and uncles raising their relatives, children. We met twice a month, sharing struggles and victories, reminding each other we weren't alone. My health had improved, actually. My blood pressure was better, my cholesterol down. My doctor said it was probably because I was active again, needed again. Purpose, it turned out, was good medicine. Tobias had served his full 3-year sentence without seeking early parole. He was released 6 months ago and was living in a halfway house in Tampa, working as a maintenance technician and attending court-mandated therapy. We'd established boundaries, supervised visits with Amelia once a month. No discussions of money or the past. Focus on rebuilding slowly. The first visit had been awkward, painful, but gradually, they were finding a new relationship, one built on honesty instead of illusion. Tobias would never be the father he'd been before because that father had been a fiction, but maybe he could be something real, something better. Sloane had been released after serving her 2-year sentence and immediately moved to California. She'd made no attempt to contact Amelia, which was probably for the best. The divorce had been finalized before Tobias was released. He told me once, during a supervised visit, that she'd blamed him for everything, refused to take any responsibility. "I'm trying to teach Amelia something different," he said, "that when you mess up, you own it. You don't deflect or make excuses. You face it and do better." "That's good," I said carefully. "She needs that." Our relationship, Tobias's and mine, was cordial but distant. We'd never be close again. Too much had been broken, too much trust shattered, but we could coexist peacefully for Amelia's sake, and maybe that was enough. At the party, as the afternoon faded into evening, Amelia came to find me. Her face was flushed from running around, her eyes bright with happiness. "Grandma, thank you. This is the best birthday ever." "You're welcome, sweetheart. Can I ask you something?" "Anything. Do you ever regret it? Taking me in, giving up your retirement to raise me." I looked at this girl who'd become my daughter in all but biology, who called me Grandma Mom and made my house a home again. "Not once," I said honestly. "You saved me as much as I saved you." She hugged me tight, and I held her, breathing in her shampoo smell, feeling her heartbeat against mine. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the yard was cleaned up, Amelia and I sat on the porch watching the stars emerge. "Tell me a story about when Daddy was little," she said. It was a new tradition, these stories. Amelia wanted to understand her father before he became the person who'd hurt us, wanted to know if there was good in him once. "When your dad was about 8, he found a stray kitten in our yard. It was tiny, scared, half-starved. He begged me to keep it." I smiled at the memory. "We didn't have much money for extras, but Tobias was so determined. He said he'd give up his allowance, do extra chores, anything. Did you keep it?" "We did. Your dad named it Lucky. He took care of that cat so carefully, fed it, cleaned the litter box without being asked, saved his allowance to buy toys. When Lucky got sick a year later, Tobias cried so hard, he stayed up all night with that cat, just petting it and telling it everything would be okay. What happened to Lucky? He got better, lived to be 17 years old. Tobias had left for college by then, but he came home for the weekend when Lucky died, to bury him in the backyard. Amelia was quiet for a moment. So he was kind once. He was, to that cat at least. He had goodness in him. I don't know where it went or when he lost it, but it was there. Do you think it's still there? Somewhere deep down? I hope so. For his sake, and for yours." We sat in comfortable silence, the night warm around us. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. The streetlight at the corner flickered the way it had for 30 years. "Grandma Mom?" "Yes. I'm glad it's you and me." "Me too, baby. Me too." Chapter 11. Reckoning and Release. 5 years after the cruise that changed everything, I received a letter that made my hands shake. It was from Sloane, postmarked from San Francisco, written on expensive stationery that spoke of her having landed on her feet. "Judith, I don't expect you to read this, but my therapist says I need to try. I'm writing to tell you that I'm engaged to be married again, to a good man who knows everything about my past and has chosen to give me a second chance. We're expecting a child. This pregnancy has made me think about you a lot, about Amelia, about the kind of mother I was and the kind I want to be. I can't undo what I did. I can't take back the things I said, the plans I made, the way I encouraged Tobias when I should have been the voice of reason. I've told my fiancé everything about the fraud, the prison time, about how I tried to steal from you and lock you away. He asked me why I did it, and I told him the truth. I was greedy. I wanted a lifestyle I couldn't afford, and I was willing to destroy an innocent woman to get it. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I see it now, what I did, how I used your love for your son against you, how I manipulated and schemed. I wanted you to know that I'm trying to be different, to be the kind of person who builds instead of destroys. I'm not asking to see Amelia. I gave up that right when I made the choices I made, but I hope she's happy, healthy, surrounded by people who love her properly. I hope you're well too, that you found peace despite everything we put you through. I'm sorry. It's inadequate, but it's true. Sloan. I read the letter 3 times, looking for manipulation, hidden motives, but it seemed genuine. The words of someone who'd done the work of looking at herself honestly. I showed it to Amelia, now 15 and wise beyond her years. What do you think? I asked her. I think people can change, she said carefully. My therapist says that growth is always possible if someone's willing to do the work. But that doesn't mean we have to let them back into our lives. Very wise. Do you think you'll write back? I considered it. Part of me wanted to tell Sloan I was glad she was becoming a better person. But another part, the part that still woke up sometimes from nightmares about being locked in a facility, didn't want to give her anything, not even acknowledgement. I don't know yet, I admitted. In the end, I wrote a brief response. Sloan, I'm glad you're finding peace and building a new life. I hope you treat your new child better than you treated the family you had. I wish you well, but from a distance. Please don't contact me or Amelia again. Judith. It felt right, honest without being cruel. I mailed it and let it go. That same week, Tobias completed his probation. He'd been working steadily, living in a small apartment, attending therapy. He'd built a relationship with Amelia that, while not what it had been, was built on truth this time. We had dinner to mark the occasion, Tobias, Amelia, and me, at a quiet restaurant Amelia chose. I got a job offer, Tobias said over appetizers. In Atlanta. Better pay, a chance to move up. But I wanted to ask Amelia how she felt about me moving further away. Amelia thought about it. I'd miss our monthly dinners. But Mom says you have to live your own life, make your own choices. As long as you stay in touch, I think it's okay. He looked at her with such love and regret that I had to look away. I will stay in touch. Video calls, texts, visits when I can. And Amelia, I want you to know that you can always call me, day or night, if you need me. I know I haven't earned that right, but I'm offering it anyway. Thanks, Dad. Dad, not Daddy. The word of a child, but Dad. The word of a young woman building an adult relationship with her father.